Marcus Ellison was 41 years old when he spotted his best friend's gym bag in the corner of his wife's hotel room on a video call. He almost missed it. The call had been going fine. Priya was tired, she said. The conference sessions had run long. She was going to order room service and sleep early. He was in their kitchen in Charlotte, reheating leftovers, half listening, the way married couples do when the conversation is comfortable and ordinary. Then she shifted the laptop to show him the view from her window. Some habit they had developed years ago, sharing small moments across distance, and the camera swept across the room for 3 seconds before settling on the city lights. 3 seconds was enough. The bag was black with a red Under Armour logo, a small white skull keychain dangling from the zipper. Marcus had given Dion that keychain himself. A joke gift after a camping trip 4 years ago. He would have recognized it in the dark. He smiled and told her the view was beautiful. She said goodnight. He set the phone on the counter and did not move for a long time. For 11 years, Marcus had been a steady husband and a structural engineer at one of the larger commercial firms in Charlotte. He was the kind of man who got to job sites at 6:45 in the morning and stayed until the questions were answered. He drove a 2016 Tacoma with 112,000 miles on it. He coached youth basketball on Saturday mornings. He had built the back deck of their house himself, measured twice, cut once, installed a pergola the summer Priya said she wanted somewhere to sit with a glass of wine and watch the fireflies. He'd never been asked twice. He saw something that needed building, and he built it. Priya had met Dion Harris 3 years into the marriage at a charity event Marcus had been too tired to attend. Marcus had been glad she went without him. He'd encouraged it. Dion was charming and easygoing and had a laugh that filled up a room, and when he became one of Marcus's closest friends, Marcus had considered himself lucky. Some men didn't have that. A wife who made real friends, a friend who felt like a brother. Unaware that the gym bag belonged to a man who had been sleeping in Marcus's guest room for the past 6 months, who had spent 11 years studying every corner of Marcus's life, and decided he wanted it. And unaware that Marcus, whose professional life was built entirely on documentation, load calculations, inspection reports, structural assessments signed and dated and filed, had already begun, in the 38 seconds after the call ended, to do what he always did. He started building. What happened next would cost both of them everything they had taken from him. Neither of them ever recovered. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The alarm went off at 5:15 a.m. That morning, the same as every weekday morning for the past 4 years since Marcus had taken the senior project manager role and started having to drive down to the Columbia site 3 days a week. He filled his thermos, black, no sugar, screwed the lid down tight, and pulled his Carhartt jacket off the hook by the garage door. His site notebook was in the inside pocket where it always was, the current project pages dog-eared and marked with the orange mechanical pencil he kept clipped to the cover. The house was quiet. Priya had left for the airport the night before, a 3-day conference in Atlanta for the healthcare company she worked for. She was a regional compliance director, good at her job, well regarded. She had packed 2 suitcases for 3 days. Marcus had noted that without mentioning it, the way he noted most things. He locked the front door and walked out to the Tacoma. In the 5 a.m. dark, the street was still. A neighbor's porch light was on. He backed out and drove toward the highway, and by 6:00 he was pulling into the Columbia site with the morning fog still sitting heavy over the framing. The junior engineer met him at the gate with the inspection sheet. Marcus walked the east side of the building first, the way he always did, moving slowly along the foundation line, checking the pour from 2 days ago. He found a hairline fracture near a drainage joint that shouldn't have been there. Not structural, not yet, but a sign that the contractor had moved too fast on a cold morning. He photographed it with his phone, made a note, circled it on his site copy, and left a flagged copy on the foreman's clipboard before the foreman arrived. When the junior engineer asked him how he caught things that fast, Marcus said what he always said. "Because I look at it long enough." He was back in Charlotte by 4:00 that afternoon. He picked up groceries, made dinner, and called Priya at 7:30 to check in. She sounded fine. Relaxed, even, she said the first session had been productive and she'd had dinner with some colleagues. He said that was good. They talked for 12 minutes. Nothing was wrong. Nothing seemed wrong. The video call was at 9:00 p.m., her suggestion. He had been at the kitchen counter eating the last of a turkey sandwich when she called and angled the laptop toward the window. That was when the camera swept across the room. 38 seconds after the call ended, Marcus opened the Notes app on his phone and typed one line. Black UA bag, skull keychain, corner of bed, near the window. Confirm. Then he washed his bowl, turned off the kitchen light, and went to bed. He did not call Dion. Dion Harris had been Marcus's friend for 8 years. They had met through a mutual contact at a gym. Dion was a financial advisor at the time, working for a mid-size firm in uptown Charlotte. Good with numbers. Better with people. He had a natural ability to make whoever he was talking to feel like the most important person in the room. And in the early years, Marcus had genuinely believed that warmth was unconditional. He had trusted it. He had introduced Dion to Priya himself at a birthday dinner and watched them laugh at the same jokes, and had been glad of it. 6 months ago, Dion had gone through what he described as a rough patch. His lease had ended and a new apartment had fallen through. He'd needed a place to stay for a few weeks. Marcus had offered the guest room without hesitating. The few weeks had stretched to 6 months. Dion was still there. Marcus had not questioned it. He was a loyal man. He did not assume the worst of people he had decided to trust. That trust, over time, had begun to look like something other than loyalty. It had begun to look like blindness. But Marcus had not known that yet. Not consciously. Not until the camera swept across the room in Atlanta and stopped. For one fraction of a second, on a black gym bag with a skull keychain that he had given to Dion Harris himself. Now he knew. He lay in the dark that night and did not sleep much. What he did, for most of that night, was think. Not about the pain, though the pain was there, sitting in his chest with a weight he had not been prepared for. He thought about what he knew and what he didn't know. He thought about what he could verify and how. He thought about the order in which things needed to happen. He was an engineer. Order mattered. Sequence mattered. Load distribution mattered. You did not demolish a structure by attacking it randomly. You identified the load-bearing points, and you addressed those first. By 4:30 in the morning, when the first gray light started at the edges of the window, he had the beginning of a sequence. At 6 a.m., he texted Dion. Just a normal text. "Hey man, any chance you can grab my dry cleaning today? Tickets on the kitchen counter." He watched the phone. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. For sure. No problem. Then, 7 minutes later, one more message. Actually heading out of town today for a couple days for work. Rain check? Marcus read that twice. He set the phone face down on the nightstand. Dion was in Atlanta. He showered, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with his laptop. He opened the shared family calendar. Priya had the conference blocked through Thursday. He scrolled back through the last 6 months. There were gaps. Nights she said she'd been at dinner with colleagues. An overnight for a compliance audit in Raleigh. A Saturday afternoon visit to her mother that had gone long. He had never questioned any of it. He had been at job sites. He had been coaching basketball. He had been building the pergola and fixing the sink and driving to the grocery store and paying the bills that covered the mortgage on the house and the car she drove and the premium on the health insurance that covered both of them. He pulled up his bank statements. He wasn't looking for anything specific yet. He was gathering. He arrived at work 20 minutes earlier than usual. He closed his office door, which he rarely did, and he made one phone call. The woman who answered had been recommended to him 2 years ago by a colleague who had gone through a contentious divorce and whose settlement had been, by all accounts, thorough. Her name was Claudette Marsh. She ran a private investigations firm in Charlotte, small, 4 people, specializing in domestic and financial matters. She had degrees from UNC and 17 years of experience. When her assistant put him through, Marcus spoke for 4 minutes. He gave her the basics. He gave her the date of the video call, the name of the hotel, Dion's full name and current address, which was Marcus's own address, and the keychain. Claudette Marsh said, "What do you need?" Marcus said, "Confirmation." Then everything. She said she'd start that day. He hung up, opened the structural report for the Columbia project, and worked without stopping until noon. Priya came home Thursday evening with a rollerboard and a warmth in her voice that he recognized as performance. She kissed him on the cheek and asked about his week. He said it had been busy. She made tea and sat on the couch and scrolled her phone. He watched a game. They went to bed at 10:30 and lay on their respective sides of the mattress, and she was asleep in 12 minutes. Marcus lay in the dark and thought about load-bearing points. Dion came back Friday morning. He let himself in with his key. Marcus had given him a key in month 1. Because Dion was family. Because that was what Marcus did. And he unpacked in the guest room and came downstairs and poured himself coffee and told Marcus he was glad to be home. Marcus made eggs and handed him a plate. "How was the trip?" Marcus said. "Atlanta," Dion said. "Just a client thing." "Boring," Marcus nodded. "Eggs need more salt." Dion agreed that they did. Marcus reached Claudette Marsh at 2:00 that afternoon. She spoke in the calm, documented voice of someone who had delivered this kind of news many times and understood that the most useful thing she could offer was precision. The hotel records showed 2 occupants in room 6 Faupe. Dion Harris had checked in Wednesday morning, 4 hours after Priya. He had used his own credit card for an upgrade to a suite. They had ordered room service on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday morning. The hotel's keycard log showed Priya's room being accessed from Dion's keycard 11 times across the 3 nights. This had been going on, Claudette estimated based on digital records she had obtained through legal means, for approximately 14 months. 14 months. Marcus was in his Tacoma in the parking garage when she told him this. He sat with his hands on the steering wheel and looked at the concrete pillar in front of him and breathed. "There's more," she said. He said, "Go ahead." She had found a shared email account, not their individual emails, a third account, a Gmail address that used a version of their combined names, the kind of thing 2 people set up when they want a private channel and believe they are being careful. The account had been in use for 13 months. She had not been able to access its contents legally, but she had documented its existence, the date of its creation, and the pattern of its usage. She had also found something else. She hesitated before she said it, the way she hesitated before anything that changed the shape of a situation. "Your wife updated her life insurance beneficiary 11 months ago," Claudette said. She changed the primary from you to Dion Harris. Marcus said nothing for a long time. How much? He said. 800,000. He sat in the parking garage and listened to the ventilation system running behind the concrete walls. Send me everything, he said. He called his attorney the following Tuesday. Not a divorce attorney, his personal attorney, a man named Gerald Webb, who had handled the legal work when Marcus had bought the lot in Mooresville 4 years ago. The 2-acre parcel on the lake that Marcus had never mentioned to Priya because she had been going through a difficult period at work, and the timing hadn't felt right. And then the timing had continued to not feel right, and eventually Marcus had simply moved on, and the lot had sat in his name, quietly appreciating, with the architectural plans he'd sketched himself filed in the bottom drawer of his home office desk. Gerald referred him to a family law partner named Sandra Okafor. Marcus was in her office on a Wednesday morning with a manila folder and a thermos of coffee. He laid the documents on the table in a precise stack: Claudette's report, the hotel records, the insurance beneficiary change, and Sandra Okafor read through them without speaking. When she finished, she looked up. "This is comprehensive," she said. "It's a start," Marcus said. She explained the position. North Carolina was an at-fault state, which meant documented infidelity had real consequences in equitable distribution. The insurance beneficiary change was a separate matter, potentially involving fraud. The guest room arrangement, the shared key, the months of Dion living in Marcus's home while conducting an affair with Marcus's wife, these were details a judge would hear. And the Mooresville property, Sandra said. "Purchased before the marriage," Marcus said. "In my name only, never commingled." She made a note. "Current value? The lot alone is assessed at $380,000. With the plans as designed, the structure would appraise at north of $800,000. Sandra put her pen down. "Mr. Ellison," she said, "I want you to understand something before we proceed. This case, as you've brought it to me, is not complicated. You have documentation, you have an at-fault state, and you have significant separate property. What you do not have is any indication that your wife understands the legal position she is in." Marcus nodded. "She believes," Sandra said, "that this is a situation where she has the advantage." "Yes," Marcus said. "She's wrong." Marcus picked up his thermos. "I know." Dion was at the house that night when Marcus got home. He was at the kitchen island eating a bowl of cereal and watching something on his laptop with one earbud in. He looked up when Marcus came in and said hey, and asked if Marcus had eaten. Marcus said he had. He hung up his jacket, checked the mail, and went upstairs. He stood in the hallway for a moment outside the guest room. The door was open. The black gym bag was on the floor in the corner, the same position it had been in the Atlanta hotel room. The skull keychain was still on the zipper. Marcus stood there for approximately 8 seconds. Then he went to his room, changed out of his work clothes, and spent 2 hours at his home office desk reviewing the architectural plans for the Mooresville lot. The design was good. He'd done it well. 3 bedrooms, a covered dock, a wraparound porch on the lakeside. He made 2 small adjustments to the roof line, initialed and dated the page, and put the plans back in the drawer. The next 3 weeks moved the way that a slow, careful demolition moves, visible only if you were watching the right things. Sandra filed the preliminary paperwork quietly. Marcus's financial accounts were assessed and separated where possible. Claudette continued to document, and the documentation continued to accumulate. The shared calendar that Marcus had discovered on Priya's laptop one afternoon when she'd left it open, which showed blocked time that didn't correspond to any work event she'd mentioned. The cash withdrawals, small and regular, $400 here and $600 there, over the past 11 months. The joint savings account that had, over the same period, decreased by $23,400 despite Marcus's unchanged direct deposit. Marcus did not confront either of them. He did not slow down at work. He coached basketball on Saturday. He fixed the catch in the refrigerator door that had been annoying him for 3 months. He made dinner most nights and ate it at the kitchen table with his phone face down. Once, Dion sat across from him at that table and said, "You've been quiet lately, man. Everything good?" Marcus looked at him for a moment. "Just busy," he said. "Big project in Colombia." Dion nodded and said he got that. Work had been a lot lately, too. And they should get dinner sometime, somewhere with a good steak, the 3 of them, when Priya wasn't so swamped. Marcus said that sounded good. He picked up his fork and continued eating. Priya received the divorce filing on a Tuesday morning. Marcus was already at the Colombia site when his phone showed the delivery confirmation. He looked at it, put the phone back in his pocket, and went back to the inspection report. She called him 4 times before noon. He let each call go to voicemail. The 5th time, he answered. Her voice had the particular tight quality of someone who had prepared for a conversation and discovered immediately that the preparation was not going to be useful. "Marcus, what is this?" "Divorce papers," he said. "I'd encourage you to read them carefully and get a lawyer before responding. We need to talk about this. We'll talk through counsel." A pause. "Are you serious right now?" Sandra Okafor's contact information is on the cover page. She's expecting to hear from your attorney by the end of the week. Another pause. "Longer. Where is this even coming from?" Priya said. Marcus looked out across the Colombia site. The framing was nearly complete on the east wing. Clean work, plumb and level, the way it was supposed to be. "Room 614, he said. "Atlanta, Wednesday through Thursday. I'll see you in court." He hung up and went back to work. Dion was gone from the house by Thursday morning. The guest room was clean. He'd stripped the bed and left the key on the kitchen counter. He had not said anything, not left a note. Marcus noticed that the skull keychain was gone from the dresser where he'd left it. He didn't have anything to say about that. He changed the locks that afternoon. What followed was the specific, methodical process of a man who had spent his entire professional life translating complexity into documentation. Sandra Okafor was experienced and exact. The forensic accountant she brought in, a woman named Paula Reese, who had a background in both public accounting and marital fraud, spent 6 weeks tracing the $23,400 from the joint savings, the pattern of cash withdrawals, and an additional $14,000 that had moved from a household credit card into an account Marcus had not been aware of. The total amount Priya had redirected over 11 months was $41,800. It was not, in the scale of their combined assets, a catastrophic number. But the methodology mattered. The intent mattered. The insurance beneficiary change mattered most of all. Priya's attorney, a man named Robert Collings who specialized in high-conflict divorce, came to the first mediation session with a posture of confidence that diminished, in increments, over the course of 4 hours. He had prepared for a standard equitable distribution argument. He had not prepared for Paula Reese's financial report. He had not prepared for the Mooresville property. The moment came midway through the afternoon session. Collings was presenting Priya's position on the marital home, the Charlotte house, which she wanted to retain, when Sandra slid a document across the table. "Before we address the marital home," Sandra said, "I want to introduce the Mooresville property into the record. This is a 2-acre lakefront parcel purchased by Mr. Ellison in his name only, prior to the marriage, with documented separate funds. It has never been commingled with marital assets. Its current assessed value, including the architectural development plans, is $880,000. The room went quiet in a particular way. Priya was looking at Sandra. Then she looked at Marcus. He was looking at the document on the table. The property is not in dispute, Sandra continued, because it is separate property under North Carolina statute. We are including it in disclosure because full disclosure is required. Mr. Ellison intends to begin construction within 6 months of the settlement. Marcus did not look up from the document. Priya said, very quietly, "You bought land." He said nothing. Collings asked for a brief recess. The mediation ended that day without a settlement, but the shape of the settlement was clear to everyone in the room by the time they walked out. The at-fault finding, the documented infidelity, the financial transfers, the insurance beneficiary. Each of these things had weight. Combined, they had the weight of a structural failure, the kind that didn't give you a warning sign, just a moment of absolute stillness before the collapse. Collings called Sandra the following Monday with a revised proposal. It was significantly different from the opening position. Sandra brought it to Marcus. He read it at the kitchen table with his thermos and his sight notebook beside him. He made 3 annotations in the margin in pencil. Then he pushed it back across the table. "This one," he said, pointing to Clause 4. "She keeps the car. I don't want it. But this one? No. The retirement accounts are separate." Paula documented the contributions. "Tell him to look at page 12 of Paula's report and call us back." Collings called back Wednesday. They settled Thursday. Priya kept the Charlotte house, the car, and a portion of one of the joint investment accounts. Marcus kept the retirement accounts, the Mooresville lot, and a structured buyout from the marital equity that settled at $112,000. The insurance beneficiary was reverted. The $41,800 in documented transfers was addressed in the settlement as a credit against Priya's portion of the marital assets. She signed on a Thursday at 2:00 p.m. in Sandra Okafor's conference room. Marcus was not present. Sandra represented him. He was in Columbia, walking the east wing of the building, marking a drainage issue with orange chalk before the foreman arrived. He drove home that evening the long way, through the neighborhood where he'd grown up, where his mother still lived in the same house she and his father had owned for 30 years. He pulled into her driveway at 6:15 and let himself in the side door. She was in the kitchen. Coffee already made. Porch light already on, though it was still light outside. She had always turned the porch light on when she was expecting someone, regardless of the hour. He sat down at the table where he had done his homework as a child and drank her coffee and told her most of it. She listened without interrupting. She had a way of being still that made stillness feel like the most natural thing in the world. When he finished, she looked at him for a long moment. "She never asked you about the lot?" she said. "No, not once in 4 years?" No, his mother was quiet for a moment. She wrapped both hands around her mug. "She built a picture of who you were," she said, "and she stopped looking at you and started looking at the picture." Marcus nodded slowly. "Move forward," she said, "not fast, but completely." He drove home in the dark. He parked in the driveway of the Charlotte house, his house for now until the settlement transferred, and sat for a moment with the engine off. He listened to the tick of cooling metal in the quiet. A neighbor's dog barked once and stopped. The street was still. He got out of the car. He went inside. He left it at the door. Dion Harris left Charlotte 9 months after the settlement. He had moved to an apartment in South End after leaving the guest room, and by most accounts the financial advisory work had slowed. A consequence, people said, of the story that circulated through the professional community in the way that stories do, specific and persistent. He had not returned calls. He had not reached out to Marcus. He had taken something that did not belong to him and discovered, as people sometimes do, that what they had taken was worth considerably less than what they had cost themselves to take it. Priya stayed in the Charlotte house for 14 months after the settlement, and then sold it. The market had been favorable. She netted enough to buy a smaller house on the east side. She did not stay in touch with anyone from the mutual social circle. Marcus heard this from his cousin, who had heard it from someone else, and he registered it the way he registered most things, as information, useful only to the degree that it changed anything, which it did not. The Mooresville lot broke ground the following spring. Marcus had hired 2 contractors and an electrician he'd known for years, and he came to the site on weekends with his notebook and his orange pencil, and walked the framing the way he walked every framing, methodically, from the south end to the north end, and back. His mother came out one Saturday in May and stood on the cleared foundation line and looked out at the lake and said it was going to be something. He told her she was going to have the guest room on the north side, the one with the view. She said she supposed she could live with that. The structure went up clean. He had designed it himself, and he had measured twice on every element, and he knew exactly how it would sit on the lot, how the morning light would come through the kitchen windows on the east side, how the covered dock would shade the water in the late afternoon. He had been carrying the design in his head for 4 years. Now it was going up board by board, level and plumb, and built to last. He drove out there on a Thursday evening in July, after the framing was complete and before the exterior work started, and he walked the structure alone in the fading light. The wraparound porch was framed. The dock footings were in. The view from the lakeside, through the open framing of what would be the main living area, was exactly what he had drawn. He stood there for a while, looking at it. He had not told anyone about the lot for 4 years. He had not hidden it. He had simply not announced it, the way he did not announce most things: his competence, his patience, his precision, his capacity to wait. He had never needed to announce himself. He built things that spoke for themselves. He walked the length of the porch framing, from the south corner to the north corner and back again, his boots on the subfloor, his eyes on the work, his name on every document that mattered, exactly where it had always been. He did not look back. There was nothing behind him worth looking at. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.